Good evening. This is May 24th, 2021 session of the Kingston City Land Bank's public board meeting. My name is Mike Gilliard. I'm the Executive Director of the Kingston City Land Bank. We welcome members of the public and ask that they keep their comments to 2 minutes per speaker. Public speaking opportunities will be held at the beginning and the end of this meeting, and this recording will be posted on our website, kclb.org. Thank you.
No, thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to May 2021 board meeting. I think we can keep it pretty fast tonight. So sorry, I'm officially calling this to order. Can we start by voting to adopt prior meeting minutes from April?
I'll make a motion to adopt. I just picked on a little typo that Bartek knows about. And he said that he would fix it, so.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving April's board meeting minutes with the little typo fixed? Oppose, abstain, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. All right. I don't have a ton to say. It's been a really busy month. As I think everyone knows, our second sales and marketing round is now open. We went with 60 days, right? This time. So that puts it into kind of early July is the deadline for applying. It's my understanding that we've had upwards of 80 applicants so far. So this time we're working a little bit differently than last time. Everybody goes to our site. That's where they submit kind of their initial interest, and then a homeowner counselor from either Repco or Hudson River Housing should be reaching out to those that look to be eligible and confirming that. So that's super exciting and a big relief. So construction continues apace. 64 Van Buren is like almost done. They've hit a couple of snags just with a subcontractor who is supposed to be replacing the collapsed sewer line, who has just been giving them the runaround. So that's no fun. 174 Hasbrook moving right along. 248 Main is also very near completion. I think windows are being ordered. I know they're being ordered this week. They might have been today. So that's good. So I think their current plan is to be done end of July, but the majority of the work should be done before that. I think it's just some lingering things that'll need to come in. So that's really cool. Mike, primarily Mike, has been hard at work preparing an architect RFP to go out next month. So that'll be for the other two pilot homes, as well as hopefully some future stuff we're doing. So that's really great, and it's in good shape so far. So that's cool. So we said, yeah.
I was just wondering, did you ever receive or move, what was like the sort of, where's the process on the amended contract at on Hasbrook? Like, is there going to be, who is the contractor just going to finish the whole job? What's the, you had mentioned that design showcase thing, and I want to know what is happening with that.
Yeah, so it's moving along. The contractors, I don't know if I mentioned this, so their timeline obviously got very delayed by the structural issues. So they're looking forward to getting out of this much sooner than it seemed like they would. So it's moving along. The contract is somewhere between the attorneys on both sides, but I think it's all moving along pretty well. The contractors have been truthfully very, very slow about getting us any kind of updated information on what these scope changes mean cost-wise. This has been, if you sense a little frustration in my voice, it's because I'm a little frustrated. It's been 4 weeks, it's been an entire month since we sat down to go over all of this stuff line by line. They've, from my perspective, had everything they need. We talk multiple times a week, so I'm not really sure why that's taking so long, but I can say that they are really excited that this is happening. On the more technical side, the designers for the kitchen and bathroom were chosen early so that they had the opportunity to design these spaces in the way that they want to finish them, so affecting like rough-in locations of fixtures and stuff. Beyond that, I don't think I have a ton of updates.
Well,
So
I was under the impression that we were not moving forward with this design showcase, whatever thing, until one, it was clear it was actually going to save us significant money. And two, that we had a discussion about it. I know at the last meeting, I had raised some concerns just about the optics of partnering with a group like that. And I thought there was gonna be some discussion before that decision was made. So I wanna, and also that it actually will save us enough money to make it worth doing that.
well, I'm not sure where we're what line we're calling as enough money or not enough money. To me at this point, almost any amount of money is worth it. We still have 2 homes to renovate. We are over budget on these, so
Daniel, if I could just chime in just for a second. My understanding from the money perspective, the structural problems in that building really, really screwed up the budget. I mean, they were huge and very expensive. So if we can get somebody else to do work there for no cost, we really should jump at it, or we're going to end up spending $300,000 on that building, and that's just not worth $300,000. So from my perspective, the money issue is pretty easy. The other part, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on the money.
But
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has shown us how much money, and my understanding is that there may be a significant amount of work that has to happen to prepare for these design people, so that we don't know if it is in fact saving a lot of money, and unclear if it then impacts the timeline and the process. So yeah.
It's not any more work to prepare for them than it would be for them to do any of this. I mean, the house is going to get finished either way. So either they can hang sheetrock and tape and mud and leave it there, or they can tape and mud and prime and paint twice and do touch-ups and all of that stuff. And that's a very small example. The bigger example would be either they can prep the room for kitchen cabinets and actually install them and oversee countertops and appliance deliveries and all of that stuff, or they can just leave us a nice box and we can let somebody else do it. So I think this is a really good option. I think they're really excited to work with us. It gets the contractors what they want, which is to get out of there sooner because they have other projects lined up and they were not expecting to be here well into the summer. I think we can talk offline. I can loop you in with Marilyn, whatever makes us feel comfortable, but aligning with a group like this, I personally don't see as a bad thing. They're a really interesting, really diverse group of designers and makers that are in this area that are going to do this either way. So I think it's really cool that they're interested in being part of the land bank rather than somebody's house that frankly doesn't really need the work. They just sort of are volunteering their house. Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I just want to say we haven't, to your question, Alana, about, what cost savings this is really going to amount to. I I know that at Finance Committee, we haven't gone through all of that yet. You know, and maybe, I don't know if we're just still like tabulating what's being expended versus, you know, what we still have left in our total budget for renovations. But you know, we'll definitely get at that next month. But I think too, like just knowing a little bit about the Kingston Design Showcase group, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to have local designers, you know, interior designers and other kind of, you know, value added makers, you know, really showcase the land bank and raise the profile of it. You know, there are all kinds of artists and you know, living and working in the city of Kingston, and I think it's a really, and again, speaking from the fundraising arm as well, I just think it's a great opportunity to have, you know, more people start caring about the land bank. That's my take on it.
Well, I would like to end by saying that I just, having still not seen any evidence of what, if anything, they're saving, I personally have concerns because I looked at their website. They're endorsed by every kind of gentrifying force in the world. It's like Coldwell, Realtor, banking, all of the fancy design magazines all over the country. When we are in a situation where housing prices in Kingston have raised higher than any other place in the country, and we are watching this force of like fancy design makers coming and literally displacing longtime community residents, I have concerns with that sort of being who we are associated with. So, you know, that's my personal feeling too. And I think at some point we could, it seems like a decision's been made and there's nothing to do, but I want to register that I think that these kinds of decisions should get some consideration and board members should have an opportunity to input, not just about financial stuff, but about who, you know, what partnerships mean in terms of the broader context in which we're working right now. So that's noted. I thought, because I had brought it up after the last board meeting, thinking that there'd be an opportunity for input, I guess it came and went. So I'm just registering my concerns.
I think it's a phenomenal point to make, Alana. I really, really do. I think it's an excellent point to make, and I think it's an excellent thing to discuss further in, you know, in whichever committee is I don't know, overseeing that.
There doesn't seem to be a committee overseeing it, which is why I'm bringing it up now, and
Well, then we
bring
can
it up as an issue for future conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a very good discussion to have, and I really do. But I think also that, you know, the purpose of the land bank is to provide affordable housing, right, and to kind of protect home sale prices, and so I don't know, I really do still think that if, you know, those who are responsible for gentrification moving to the city of Kingston learn about the land bank through this design showcase opportunity, then and then become, you know, involved in helping amplify the cause of the land bank and perhaps being donors. And I think that that's, you know, it's a hard topic to discuss and to find where our organization fits within that. But I don't think that there's anything served by ignoring and declining to work with that kind of artist and maker, you know, particularly when they are people who are living and working here in Kingston.
And they'll be continuing to publish and all the fancy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I disagree, but it doesn't seem like,
Yeah.
again, I'm registering my concern and we can move on. I wanted to.
Okay.
No, but I think Karen makes a good point. I know some craftspeople who are Rowan Woodwork, for example, who are who are local people. They've lived here a long time. They have a business where they install cabinetry. It's very nice. And it would be great to give them, you know, to help them, to give them a plug in this. You know, I don't see a downside to helping local craftspeople by getting them advertising. I think it's a good thing. But
Yeah, I think we could talk about this all night. It's a nuanced conversation. I think I would just say, there is no question that this will be a cost savings, and I really wish for all of our sakes that I could be more specific about that, but I can only work with the information I have, and I'm waiting on a lot of information. So there's that. I think to Bob's point, there's also the element of the homeowners, and frankly, the land bank is not buying Rowan woodwork cabinets as much as we love them and they're beautiful. We can't afford it, and it's a whole lot of work that so far is pretty much me. So yeah, most of our stuff is coming from pretty major retailers. It is not, I'm not sourcing every single light fixture and things, which is exactly what these people do. So there will be a lot of local stuff represented. There will be a lot of higher quality stuff than we could practically afford to put in. So I think, Alana, I completely hear you. I would love to talk to you more about this later. I did mention to Marilyn, who runs the Kingston Design Show House, some of the concerns that the board had, like what you said, and she is more than used to answering questions like this and has kind of heard all of that stuff. So I think for everyone's sake, it would be good for you guys to connect, and I'm happy to make that happen. So I would like to move on though, unless anyone has anything.
Just one one thing really quickly. Yeah, I mean, this is a nuanced conversation, and I'd love to have it at another time, but because I think you're all making very good points. But I do just want to say, in terms of a practical thing to consider, is like the last show house. I've only been to the one that they did last year. Because I had a friend who was a maker who did the kitchen in it, and each room was done in a different style. And so I don't know what your conversation's been yet with Marilyn, but like, I think that could be a little bit weird for our affordable, for our purposes. I don't want people to feel like, what's this like, mixed match, kind of house that they've created. So if there can be some consistency of theme throughout, I think would be appreciated.
Yeah, so I have talked about that with her, same concern. In part, it gets mitigated a little just because once it's over, like they pull out everything that's not permanent. So like light fixtures stay, but furniture does not. So like things naturally just become a little less.
Yeah. There's some funky wallpaper.
A lot of love.
There's a lot of like funky wallpaper.
Yeah, I mean, luckily after the many phases of construction that these projects take, the wallpaper is a very small concern. If we have to peel it off ourselves, I'll volunteer. But we've talked about, let's make sure that the house still feels like a cohesive house. They do have review sessions on their end of everybody presents their mood boards and they play with it to make sure that the houses, don't look nuts.
Cool.
So I'm not really concerned about it, but I am keeping an eye on it.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Cool. What month was this? I guess this month. We were approved to purchase Franklin. Was that last month? We were approved by the council this month. Yeah, that's the one. So that was very good news. We are buying 124, 126 Franklin, which, as you guys know, was going to be office space. We now have the opportunity to put our funding into making it a home, which is very cool. So that we should be closing, I think, this week or next week with the city. We've just been waiting on a couple things from our title companies and word from Corp Council on when they're going to be ready for this. Mike might have some more updates on that than I do. But otherwise, we also submitted to the city our whole list of everything from the list of 36. Here's what we're buying, here's what we don't want. We did request a little bit more time on 4 properties. Happy to get into or not, but just to see if we can make it happen. So 2 houses that are in really, really bad shape, but maybe could be salvaged. And then 2 buildings that potentially have some environmental issues that we need to figure out if they're resolved or resolvable or something that we're willing to take on. So that's the update there. So everything that we are buying should be within the next couple weeks. I've seen a whole lot of emails about title stuff. Well, if all goes well, Mike is giving me that look. But we're doing everything on our end, I think, to make that happen. So that's good. And then funding, I know we've had a little bit of a few little donations coming in here and there, which is super cool. We started to talk to Novo about making a grant proposal for 2022. So that's something that I think all the committees should kind of have in mind, but we'll definitely talk about more, but we'd like to submit something to them in July. So June is going to be a lot of planning around that, which I think coincides with our like 6 months since the strategic plan. So we have some exciting planning activity on the docket. I think that's it for me. Did I miss anything important? All right. We have no members of the public as far as I can tell. So I guess we'll skip that. Mike.
If I could just ask one question, there's an iPhone that's logged in. I just want to make sure that that's Serena, if not a member of the public.
Can we turn that off for a second, please? I have to answer questions.
Okay. I think I heard Serena.
I heard Serena.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mike,
Hey,
tell us stuff.
well, without coordination yet again, Daniel, I think we're of the same mind. So there's not much to add to the updates that you've provided. Maybe I could give a little more depth on the acquisition process and how that is proceeding. We have 6 properties that we're pursuing off that list of 36, 5 of which are single family homes. 1 is a vacant piece of property. Brian, our counsel, is wrangling the title companies to effectuate closing on those this month. That still is the goal. And then external to that, there are 2 other properties. There's 124, 126 Franklin, for which I don't believe we've received notice that the city is ready to close, although I assume that's forthcoming and probably happens after this round of closings. And then 108, 110 Henry, which I think is still going through the process of being prepared, ready for closing by the city. But those are some minor updates to what you had said, Daniel, about that process. Construction updates, I don't have any, but beyond what you've said, Daniel, but I would invite maybe Owen, if you're interested, if you wanted to jump in, just the opportunity, you don't need to at all, but I just wanted to throw it out there because I saw you're on. Is there anything that hasn't been discussed you want to chat about, or don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
I just want to thank Bartek and Daniel Sum for jumping in and helping with getting the lawn watered at 248 Main so that lawn's growing back well. I think Mike shared that nice voicemail from the neighbor that people are appreciating that the property does look a lot better. And actually, I'd say all 3 properties are kind of turning the corner where they're starting to be a visual benefit to their surroundings rather than just a construction site or a not in good shape. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Thanks, Owen. Thanks for everything you're doing to keep these things on track and
Sure.
moving forward. And we'll be busy with 2 more soon enough. So as Daniel mentioned, we've got that RFP coming out for architecture. My goal is still the first of the month to issue that, so we can talk through some timelines around that. But basically, that would be a 1-month RFP to select an architect for the plans section, acting as the architect of record for the next 2 homes, being Franklin and Greenkill. So we would bring that to the board for approval because it's a contract, so that would show up in advance of any signing of contracts with the architect. And then we would move forward with drawing plans and preparing for an RFP, just like we did last time for the general contracting community to bid the same way as last time. Hopefully more bids this time. Hopefully we're a little bit more of a known resource. And I know people are still just as busy, but we hope to be able to connect with more local folks. That was difficult last time. So if you know anyone, we're getting ready to do that this year. And sorry,
Mike,
someone-
can I just interrupt? You keep
Please.
saying bid. I assume we're going to go for proposals?
you're
Best value
absolutely right.
proposals?
You're absolutely right.
Just to
Yes.
make sure we're consistent with that.
Thank you for correcting me. You're
No
absolutely
problem.
right.
No problem.
Proposal. Absolute, not a bit.
And Mike, I'm guessing you and Owen will invite us once the current homes are completed for a walkthrough. Will you invite the board members to do that, or?
Absolutely. If you'd like to see them, we'd love to show them again.
Yeah,
We do. I'm glad you mentioned that because we
some
sorry.
champagne and toast or something.
Or a paintbrush and
Or a paintbrush.
shovel, and we can start landscaping, you know. But it would be great to see everyone. We do have ongoing construction walkthroughs. I don't believe the date has been set, Owen, but it's usually around the middle of the month for next month. So we'll send those around and open that up if board members want to take a tour. And along those lines, thank you to the mayor for coming out to look at our sites this month. He wanted to make a tour along with Summer as Director of Communications. And so that was nice to see some additional, support of our work from that, from his role. And so it's greatly appreciated. To add to the sales updates, I don't have much to say that Daniel didn't cover, other than we did receive out of those 87 genuine expressions of interest. I will just note that 73 of those fall within our household size requirements. So given that last time we had 0 that fell within our household size requirements, that's quite an improvement. And I think the process is working really well. Kudos to Bartek and the entire comms team for pushing the message out, and just the whole thing. I think we figured out the way to reach, many of the people that we're trying to serve. So I think that's great. The applications have trailed off since that first week. So if you know of anyone, we still have that link. It's still open until July 10th. These aren't the only homes you could say that tell them that we're selling. So we will keep a wait list for people who are interested for future marketing opportunities. So that's my update on that. And yeah, I think you covered everything, Daniel. I was going to mention the mid-year strat plan review would be something everyone could look at in their committees. And that was about it, unless there are any questions.
Sorry, when did you say that the RFP was going to go out?
My goal is June 1st.
Okay.
So I think we're in good place for that.
And you're giving people a month to apply?
A month to respond, conduct some walkthroughs, just like we did with the general contractor RFP, review their proposals, make a recommendation, and hopefully get approval after the bids are due on the 1st. So
Will they do like mock-ups of the? Okay, yeah.
yes.
Cool.
Would be happy to send you the draft, Omari, if you're interested in where we're at. But I think we're capturing lessons learned from last time. Just a couple more things, like some renderings of the front of the building, are definitely part of that proposal.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, what we had for the second round was really nice. So
That's great.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
That's my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Bob, do you have a committee report for us?
Sure, I'll be relatively brief. We had a meeting. It was exciting as always. We discussed a couple things that have already been talked about by you, Daniel, and Mike. The crux of it, the most important thing that we talked about was our reviewing of the applicant evaluation criteria, which Alana wanted to do and which we need to do. And you know, we have a set of criteria that we went into this with that we're kind of bound to, I'm told. But we talked about the fact that we are somewhat concerned about the fact that we run the risk of not meeting our mission, in that we would like our successful home buyers to be members of underrepresented community, people who are underrepresented in home ownership in Kingston. So we're talking about how we can encourage that to be the case. So we talked about our criteria. We talked about the fact that we'll be sending two candidates for each house to the board for approval or for acceptance. And with two, because if the first one is unable to get their mortgage or unable to make the closure, we want to back up so that we can make sure that the house does get sold. So we've asked the attorney to take a look at some affirmative action stuff for our next round, so that we can adjust our criteria for the next round of houses to help us make sure that we get to the population that we're looking to get to, and that'll evolve over time. So we're anxiously awaiting what we learned from our pre-qualifiers to look at who our candidates are. So that's really the biggest topic right now with acquisition and disposition. What did I leave off? Alana, did I leave anything out?
Well, this is the thing I don't want to say, but I feel like, to slightly qualify what you said, we're checking with the attorneys to see if we can create a kind of some sort of affirmative action statement.
See, I would say
I'm hoping we can, but I think we wanted to make sure we could, right?
right. I would prefer to say how we can.
How I would prefer that too, but I just was trying to make sure
Right.
that we were being clear that we will make sure that how we
Right.
can.
Our intention is.
That's a good addition. Yes.
You know, how we can. So that's it. That's all. Anybody else? Serena, have you got anything? I know, don't turn the phone on if the kids are going crazy.
Sometimes I can't even find the mute button to turn it off. Other than that, I think we just talked about what, right of first refusal? Was that, or was that, I think I'm now mixing up my committees? No.
Well, we
don't-
talked about that was discussed at the finance committee kind of, but I'm not sure whether the mayor made the request or not for the right of first refusal for future houses. So I'll leave it to Mayor Noble to address that.
Okay, that was the only other thing I remembered us discussing.
Yeah, I was not clear on where it went. So
I just,
I think that from my perspective, I think that it's eventually headed to laws and rules to be able to be discussed further. It wasn't really clear from the conversation whether it's going to find its way there on its own, or whether I need to follow up with potentially some more details. And so that's kind of where we currently have it left at this point.
so just Bob, apologies if I'm totally wrong about this. We talked also just process wise, like how this is supposed to work. So I think where we landed was basically, I was just going to ask the board, which is the basic framework is that the acquisition disposition committee is going to receive qualified applicants to review. And then it's sort of option A, the committee just makes a decision because that's what the committee does, or the committee brings a recommendation to the board for a full vote. I can see pros and cons either way. I guess kind of my prevailing feeling is I'm not really sure on what basis a board member who wasn't involved in those discussions would object to a candidate being selected. but I just want it to be something that everybody feels comfortable with. There's also sort of a timing thing that could be an issue where obviously we want to be able to award contracts, efficiently. And if we're waiting for a board vote, then that can delay things slightly. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I don't know. Does anyone have strong feelings about this? Because I could kind of go either way.
Has the acquisition disposition committee created a decision-making process, or because I think that would determine whether I'd be comfortable with the committee making the vote, or if it needs to come to a full board.
Right.
If you could really clarify what that process is, then I could trust in the decision. But I'm not saying I don't trust in the decision, but I just want to make sure that like I could speak to it, because other people are going to ask us like, well, why did this person get the house? And I want to be able to say, oh, well, we have a very clear process,
Right.
and this is why, this is the criteria.
And I think what's like inherently just tricky is like, the number of things that we are actually allowed to know about these candidates is very limited. So aside from sort of these very basic parameters, to me, it's sort of like, I don't know, like a college admission or something where it's like a huge group of people are all perfectly qualified. So what puts them over the edge? And we've asked for a narrative statement in the application. I don't, and I think part of this is just that we haven't done it before, so it's hard to know kind of how this conversation is going to go. But it's not especially clear to me that aside from the very kind of factual, objective information that we're allowed to know, plus a narrative statement, beyond that, I don't know that there's more of a process.
Well, I can speak to that for a minute, Daniel. We do have an evaluation criteria listing, and we've circulated that. We can circulate it again. It's very, I would describe it as sparse. I think what Daniel points out is, it's current address, age of household members, household size, gross annual household income, purchaser's credit score, and then the applicant narrative. So I think really what's going to come down to be a differentiator is going to be the applicant narrative at this point in time. So, it's not like a score where the person with the biggest number or the lowest number is going to win. It is much softer than that, and that makes it more difficult, I think. And our fear, and I think it's a legitimate fear, is that will it produce the results that we hope it will? That's our worry. So
Yeah,
I think Daniel's right. We'll see how it goes, but it is going to be there's as much. It isn't going to be as quantitative, as many as I'm an engineer. I like to have a number. If it's 8, I wish the answer was 8. Okay, you're it. It's not going to be that way, I'm afraid, and that's going to be difficult.
so maybe it makes sense for it to come to the full board for a vote.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, we should, and maybe we've already done this, so I'm sorry, but most nonprofits have in their bylaws or their, charter that disposition of property needs to go to the full board usually. And maybe ours are different, but I think that is, pretty commonplace. And so I think it may end up at the board whether we want to or not, at least under the current, bylaws or charter. We should check that. Maybe Brian could look into that.
Steve, you're right. I'm pretty sure our bylaws do say it goes to the board. And so a recommendation from the Acquisition and Disposition Committee goes to the board for their action. So, creating the recommendation, I guess, is the challenge that I see. But,
Yeah, my second question, I guess, is, because we have so many applicants, is there something that we're going to glean in this process about what those applicants need? And will that inform kind of how we proceed with the next few houses. Like, I'm guessing that those people will stay on the list, so they won't necessarily have to just reapply, but they'll be on the list so that next time that we have a house, they're being contacted. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, it is, Amari. They would stay on the list for future marketing opportunities, and what we glean from this list would be important, perhaps particularly around credit score, something like that. We may find that that's an impediment, but I think there are avenues that we're pursuing to work within, those constraints for these first 3 sales. So we'll have to see what, as we get further along working with people, what the impediments might be. For sure.
And it'd be great to know kind of if there's a way to find out either, I don't know if it's present in this narrative or by like having Repco or is it Housing Works or
Hudson River Housing.
Hudson River Housing. Wrong organization. Having them do a little bit more interviewing of folks about their like specific needs as far as the house goes, because like if folks need like, or if folks would prefer an open concept versus separate rooms, or like, I don't know, like make sure there's a laundry room there, and like, I don't know, any of those like things that would affect the quality of life in the house, that might be useful information.
Cool. Well, we're speaking with them, each one of those groups once a week. So hopefully some of that will start to come out.
Cool.
Thanks.
The other thing just to mention that we could certainly do is just a lottery. I think I don't love that option just because I feel like there should be some, I don't know, more consideration than pulling something out of a hat, but it's certainly a great equalizer in many ways. So that's also a way to do it. And then I guess bringing it to the board, like I guess I'm not super clear on like whether that can fall under executive session because it's a contract discussion, but it feels like, we're going to be talking about people's fairly personal information, and that's not something I want to do on a recorded public forum for their sake. So we might have to look into that too, if you guys feel the same. Yeah, Alana.
Well, I just wanted to make sure people knew though that in our committee discussion last week, we pretty unanimously, I think, threw out the lottery. We said we did not want this to be a lottery. So unless something changes, like our committee discussion was definitely moving away from that as an option for this round.
Totally. And I definitely think for this round, like it doesn't make sense for us to ask for a narrative and then do a lottery. Like that does seem at odds. So anyway, I think a lot of this we will learn as we go. Like it's so hard to just, we don't know what this is going to be like.
But Mike, can sometime in the process, as we narrow this down and we end up with a list of qualified people, can we get from our qualifiers some sort of a general, I'm not talking about demographic breakdown? How many by ethnicity, by sex, by, is there a way we can get a gross picture of the population that's applying for these? I'm not talking, I don't want individual, I'm talking just what is the cohort that is applying for these? What's the makeup of the cohort?
I think to your point about wanting the data, and making decisions that are data driven, we're not asking for those 2 categories of information, sex and ethnicity, in the application. If we were to ask for those, we could certainly build up a database based on that. I think what we've put forward now is a more general conservative way of doing this, given that we're not acting in the capacity that Repco and Hudson River Housing are, and they're the specialists who have the qualifications to do this type of work. And it's difficult to make informed decisions without, as much information as you can have. And that's why this is probably going to be a little bit of feeling along process. But certainly we would have data along the way.
Is it
Erica.
is it possible to get that information after, like after this round for these 3 homes have closed, and then Repco and or Hudson River Housing would be able to look through what applications were more fleshed out, and then provide us with that information? We could, I mean, at some point they'll have to provide that information, right? For not all of it, but some of it at least. Sorry, it's a very windy night. My curtains are
We can work with them to ask them to collect any data set that we feel we want to have possession of. But right now there's certain things that we're just not asking for. And so we won't have that.
Yeah, I just meant after we've made after people have been through the application process and the land bank has, made the decision on who gets to buy houses and the cohort that was associated with these first 3 of the 5 pilot homes is closed. Maybe there'd be a way of getting that information. Maybe not.
Maybe.
You're looking doubtful.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. I think for some reason I'm asking people to speak. Erica, I think you raised your hand. That's helpful.
So I might be stirring the pot. I'm sorry. I want to understand the rationale behind not doing a lottery, because I think I agree. I like what Karin is asking about after the fact, right? So to then understand the demographic, so that there's it's clear that there's no bias, right, based on anything, and I feel that it protects the organization. But I guess I'm wondering with the lottery, if the lottery is I don't know, maybe I'm just like on the safe side, right? Because now you're proving that there was no bias or any particular interest, or no one had a better hand or selection than someone else that made it to that qualifying round, and it really just protects the organization as a whole and protects the board members, right? Because you're so active in it. It's not like you have staff and a team. It's outside of the board. So, and it can be easily done by creating, like, you can have an Excel and then do like a statistical formula, and you are like outside of it completely, and the number you got was the number you got. So I guess I was just thinking about like protecting the organization, because at any point someone can say, well, how, anyone can question why you chose somebody versus someone else, and having that that kind of outcome, that plan. I don't know.
No, I agree with you,
I'm so
Erica.
nervous all the time.
No, a lottery protects an organization that collects information that could open them up to a discrimination suit. The way that this is set up is that we don't have any information that could open us up to a discrimination suit when we're making our selection. So it's, you either get one or the other, is what I would advise strongly, not both. So
like, I feel like a maybe helpful scenario is like somebody says in their narrative, I've lived here my whole life and I've been looking for housing for 10 years. And somebody else says in their narrative, I'm really interested in moving to Kingston. I follow some people on Instagram. It seems cool. All other things might be equal. And I feel like the board would reasonably skew toward the first candidate. And I believe that that is a fair thing to do-ish. No,
I think my concern is that it's
lottery sounds great.
I wait, so I'm sorry, I know it's like I'm supposed to be the
You're-
numbers person, right? But I think my concern is that the benefit is just to have a person in Kingston, be it someone who's lived there forever or bringing in new life, right? So how could you, I don't know, I guess that's a very particular situation, right? But like, how do you try to do the best possible way of just creating an opportunity for somebody without taking very specific things into consideration? But Mike's the one with the knowledge on housing, so I think I'm just stirring the pot a little bit. I'm sorry.
If I can just, here's one of the dilemmas too. You know, part of our mission is to provide home ownership opportunities to people who are presently underrepresented in the home ownership market in Kingston. That's one of the things that we want to do. So the question is, how do you determine, you know, who is underrepresented? And how do you determine which applicants fall into that cohort, that of people who are underrepresented in home ownership in Kingston? That requires a bunch of background that we don't have, unfortunately. I think someday we can get to that, but but in a traditional affirmative action approach to things, you know, you need to know. And I go back to my background, where you know if you have a population and you know what it's consisted of, and you know who's underrepresented, so you can say, you know, part of our issue is that we want to be more diverse. We want more representation of those that are underrepresented. That's defendable, but we don't have the background to do that. So the dilemma that we face as part of our charge is, how do we accomplish that? And so my fear is a lottery is blind to that element, and therefore you have no chance of meeting that charge, of fulfilling that part of our mission. But that said, you know, I'd go to the lottery if you have one, Daniel.
Well, I mean, I think objectively, legally, like the lottery is a much more safe and not as risky thing to do. I don't really see how you can argue with that. So I think that it's how, I guess, how comfortable are we just leaving it to the hands of fate, and how, I guess that's the only question, because I think it does create some risk on its own, but different kind of risk maybe than us getting sued for discrimination on some level. Karen.
I wonder if a lottery is something to look at, you know, when we have a greater volume of houses to, you know, to sell, basically. And, you know, while there are so few, since we're just so early in our I wouldn't say career, but just early in our life here with Land Bank, that, you know, having a what would seem a more meaningful approach, while also being careful in terms of remaining unbiased. I think that makes sense for a way forward. And then, you know, as the organization starts having a greater volume of homes available, or maybe in a different pathway, you know, than this pathway, you know, maybe then lottery becomes more appropriate. That's not being on the acquisition and disposition committee. That's my contribution. I don't envy you all.
Sorry, I just want to kind of draw our attention to like one specific point that you made, Bob, about returning, or would you say something about underrepresented populations being homeowners? Is that what you said? So I think that's like slightly different than my understanding of the mission. So I think we should be very clear on that not all of the homes require it to be a homeowner that is taking ownership of the house, and that we're really looking at what are the needs of the community, because not everyone's going to want to be a homeowner. And so I think we should make sure that we're very clear about that as we move forward.
I think, yeah, I would just say, I think Bob was more speaking to serving populations that have been underserved by the housing market in general. So for this instance, it's about home ownership. It may be in other ways, if there's rental units and things, then there's that. But I think it was just noting that as we're dispersing 3 homes, noting the real inequity in housing ownership
Absolutely.
in the city of Kingston. So for this instance, it's about ownership. But yeah, I think you're right, Omar. We didn't explicitly say that's the only thing.
And I will say, Bob, I now rescind my comment about the lottery, because I think if it perfectly the way you put it was that should be the bigger goal, and you can support that. And I do not envy you at all. So I'm done. Thank you.
Okay.
That's why Bob's chair of our committee.
And what a chair he is. So sorry, not to backtrack, but so we will be, the acquisition disposition committee will be creating a recommendation for the board to approve. Is that the consensus? Okay.
Please
Okay.
say it again. Sorry.
So kind of where we all started was the acquisition disposition committee will review the applicants. They will basically come up with kind of top 2. We will vote as a board to award the contract as a group. Yeah,
Would you outline a decision-making process?
we will do our best. It honestly might have to be more of a retroactive thing, because aside from, here's the basic qualification stuff we know and a narrative that could say anything, I don't know how else to formally.
I would suggest that, I think Omari's right. And I would suggest that as the package that we send on to the board for approval needs to have in it, as a minimum, a narrative of how we came to our decision and our recommendation. For lots of reasons, not the least of which is one that Erica might be, if somebody's going to sue us, we've got to have documentation about how we came to this decision, instead of just saying, gee, we, like this guy's, essay. We've got to present our case in such a way that it can be defended to the board and defended to the public, who will be, those that didn't get picked might be mad. So we need to be prepared to talk about why we made the decision that we made, and then send that to the board, and the board can base their action on that, on whether they think we did the right thing or not. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a tricky thing. Mike will be there to keep keep everything in check, and we'll find out together. I don't know how else you do it. We're all learning. Okay. Bob, does that wrap up your committee report? Great job.
I think that's more than enough.
Cool. Fundraising, Karen.
Thank you. Fundraising. We talked about our goal to raise $30,000 to offset the purchase price of the 2 final pilot homes. That is going to, we had initially had a June goal, because we're tying it to when the 2 homes will be priced, or likely to be priced, and that is the point at which we can apply whatever funds we have raised to reduce that purchase price or sale price. So that has now been moved to October based on information that Mike provided. And then we also talked about our grant applications, and that we'll be working on resubmitting for Peckham and Sawyer Savings. And then we also spent a fair amount of time
talking about looking for non-board members who may want to join the fundraising committee in a capacity as sort of community relations, helping with outreach to build a potential donor base, that sort of thing. So if anyone has any thoughts on members of the public that they think would want to participate in the fundraising committee, please let us know. Myself, Amari, Aneshka, Mike. Send us an email or a call or a text. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Are we sending thank yous to donations that trickle in?
Yeah, no, yes, we are supposed to be. No, we have not yet. We have talked about drafting a template letter, and I think unfortunately that sits with me to review a template maybe that Aneshka provided. I don't know if that was sent to the land bank's attorney or not, but yes, I know that that is a high priority.
Cool. It's nice to say thanks.
It is. It's incredibly important.
Yeah.
I agree.
And do we have like a newsletter built into like our MailChimp or something that like we can stay engaged with these people? That has...
I have no idea. That has never been discussed, and maybe that's more of a comms committee thing. I don't know. Maybe that falls between the cracks. Bartek?
They're, for individual donators, they're not automatically added to our MailChimp, but we can manually add them, and then they can be added to our normal list.
I think we should.
Yep.
Erica says yes. So therefore,
Every donation, even if it's $5, you want to add them to remind them, because maybe they'll sign up to do a reoccurring $5, you know, and it just kind of gets them in on the action. Or maybe there's something that comes up later on that interests them even more. So even ask for like their neighbors or like anyone, right, to just kind of build up that list, because the more you get the information out there, the more opportunity you have to potentially have a donation.
cool. Thanks. Finance and audit.
So I hope you all had a chance to review the wonderful financial management package that Erica put together. You know, we've spent some time sort of going through, seeing what would be beneficial for you all to know, and presented in a way that makes sense and is easy to digest. Erica did put a very helpful financial statements 101 at the end, which lets you know what information you can find in each of the reports. So, and then she included a very nice narrative about where we are currently. I'll just go very quickly and sort of superficially about what reports are in there, and then you know, we'll have to defer to Erica, who's more knowledgeable about the details, since she lives and breathes this often. But there is the profit and loss statement, which shows our income that has been received this year, January through March of 2021, and that 275,000 came from Novo, and then that is currently our only income. And then below that lays out all the expenses that have been done to date or incurred to date. Note that the acquisition of property is not included in this profit and loss, because when we purchase homes, they're actually applied as a fixed asset. So you would see that more on the balance sheet, which is the next document that Erica provided in the report. So the balance sheet shows how much we have in various accounts. You can see almost everything has been moved over to M&T. We have a little under 808,000 in there. The temporary restricted account for 7,000, that's the 2 gifts we received from Ulster Savings Charitable Foundation and the Ulster County Youth Health Foundation. And then a little bit left over in the Catskill Hudson Bank, a little over 10,500 for any outstanding payments that would have to come in. And then you can see under fixed assets, that's where we would have our homes that were properties that are being purchased. And then a statement of cash flow, which shows what's coming in and going out. And then she had a nice financial narrative, which sort of, has a little bit of what I've just described, but you'll see the audit, which is the second headline, that we are on track. It says here we're on track to have the report completed by June 30th. Our deadline actually is June 15th to submit the audit to the ABO. Erica received an email. She's shaking her head. But that if it's submitted after that date, there just needs to be a statement as to why that there's not necessarily a penalty for doing that. I believe there's one outstanding. Last I knew, there was one outstanding item that they were waiting on. And then the budgets to actual, you'll see the headline is FY21 board approved expenses. These are all the expenses that were approved in October of 2020, plus the known revenue at that time, which was Novo Foundation funding as well as enterprise funding. So, and that just sort of shows, what was projected being the budget, and then the actual being what has come in, and what expenses have been paid out. So, I don't know if there are any specific questions or if Erica would like to add any more context.
But I do want to point out, I'm noticing an error on the P&L for this board approved package. The P&L should have had it as April, but I just went back and saw that there was like a hard code custom date when I ran the report and the back end of it. So what you're seeing here is a January through March P&L, and it should have had it through April to mimic what you're seeing in the budget versus actual, and I apologize for that. So your budget versus actual that you're seeing is the income that came in, which is also reflected in the balance sheet when you're looking at cash on this report, so I apologize. I wanted to chime in on the ABO reporting. So the guidance that went out for the ABO, obviously it was originally March 31st. They then issued a statement on their site that stated 60 days from the original deadline, which would have put us at the end of March. We anticipate to have the audit the audited financial statements by June 15th, thus getting us to the ABO June 30th date. So their additional guidance is listed on their site, as well as I emailed them just to make sure that we had it in writing from us that we were actively inquiring about making sure there's no penalty or deadline. So there isn't, we again, to what Karin said, we just have to make sure that we have it in writing explaining what the holdup was, because this is not uncommon, in addition to the fact that COVID has kind of set everyone back. And then perfect explanation on the balance sheet and where to find the acquisition and properties. It's just because they're fixed assets, they're categorized differently. And I'm hoping that the financial statement 101 kind of clears up where we're going to identify a specific type of expenses. Also, I really do want to point out there's a specific part of the financial statement 101 that talks about kind of revenue recognition, and it lists out all the different types of ways, all the different types of revenue, and then the ways that they're going to be classified, which is the ASU 2016-14. So sometimes that can look a little confusing when we have revenue that's coming in or known revenue that's supposed to come in. We can only recognize it as it actually is received and not as it is promised. So something you'll see similar to what we talked about, Karen pointed out on the budget versus actual, if we're looking at where the budget lines are for revenue and you see a large amount, because that's, we talked about the assumed revenue and created the streamlined number. So what we're accounting for in your actual is cash that we actually received against that budget. And that's going to be kind of fluid based on the timing in which we receive it. And we're still in a safe space because the revenue that we put on that budget was known revenue, right? So stuff we know that we're going to receive in this current year. If that makes sense, right? So if we were promised 5 payments, we're going to see that come in like every other month or something of that nature. That's where you're going to see those spikes. And there may be a month where it looks like the budget, the revenue received is pretty low. Any questions?
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Does that wrap up the Karen part of the evening?
Sorry, yes,
You're
we're all done. Many thanks to Omari and Mayor Noble for their input on this. It was a lot of discussion, and so, you know, it might be tweaked a little bit as we move forward. We welcome any suggestions on, you know, what you're seeing and any questions. You know, I know it's a lot to process, so please feel free to follow up with any questions after you've had a chance to go through it. Very important that we're all very informed and know where things are and what they're coming from. It's something I've really appreciated working with Erica. She's very interested in educating board members on that they, you know, remain informed and they know exactly what they're voting on and the status of the organization. So please feel free to do that.
Thanks so much, both of you, and Karen for the back-to-back reports. You're brave. Okay, Bartek, comms, you've had a busy month.
Right, so of course we launched the second marketing period of our first 3 properties earlier this month. I'll just mention 2 things. One is that we've worked with Rupco and Hudson River Housing to confirm that they will respond to all of the applicants, even if they are determined to not qualify. So it's great to close that loop and make sure that we're communicating with anyone that has taken the time to submit our form. The second item I would say, we have received you know, quite a bit of submissions. I think it's up to around 90 now. However, we don't know the status of those 90 and if any of those individuals qualify. The good news is that we will be receiving that feedback from Rupco and Hudson River Housing on a rolling basis. And we have 60 days within this marketing period. So right now, I think we're in a little bit of a holding pattern to see if we need to do a major pivot for the remainder of the marketing period regarding the outreach to make sure that we have actually reached our target groups. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think that's all I wanted to mention tonight. And if anyone, of course, has any feedback on any communication around the marketing period, I'd love to hear it now or later.
Thank you for all your work, Bartek.
I would just add the comms committee had beautiful new banners printed up to announce that you could apply for these houses, and they're on all 3 homes. I think Van Buren's is down temporarily because they're putting siding up, but they looked great, and thank you for that and everything do an incredible amount of work. Aneshka, we didn't meet, but
Yeah, I just want to tell everyone that June is coming up and we will have a governance meeting in June. And I want to remind everyone that this is the halfway point for our self-evals. So Robert and I will work out some kind of a way to do that and to reach you with a form probably that you should fill out in good time. And this is kind of a way for you to remember and not forget about what you want to also, put in your final annual statement, but it's a good halfway point in the year to do that. So that's all I wanted to say. Robert, is there anything else that we need to prep our colleagues with? No? Did he disappear somehow? I think that's it.
I think you covered it.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you.
cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I know we also, I think, did like committee goals for like mid-year too. So maybe just give those a look and see how we did. Cool. We still have no members of the public, so I'll skip that. New business, I think we just talked about a bunch of it. Bob had asked earlier about the right of first refusal, not, I just know that Mike and me and Brian have worked a little bit on just trying to recommend some language for it to make sure that we're set up for success, which of course is the intent of it. So that will be sent, I think, to the mayor very soon, probably this week or next. And yeah, it should be a very exciting next month. And hopefully Van Buren will get a sewer line someday. So we have so much to look forward to. All right. Anyone else have new business or?
It's just a quick comment or question, I guess, maybe from Mike. A neighbor of mine was asking about one of the houses that we had considered purchasing, but I think maybe was on that list that was returned to the city. Or I'm not sure actually exactly what house it is, but is there any new information for folks about what's happening with the houses that we were considering beyond the 5 that we've purchased?
So I don't think there's any houses on the list of properties that we officially rejected. Are there?
North Street.
Oh, yes, there are 2 that are in the floodplain and kind of just need to be demolished.
In Chapel.
Oh, in Chapel is it? Yeah, occupied. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the ones that the land bank is not purchasing, so the Finance and Audit Committee voted unanimously for a amendment to Resolution 172 that removes, I think it's 13 properties that the land bank just fully rejected. But aside from an occupied 2-family and 2 tear down houses, they're all vacant property parcels. I believe assuming that amendment passes, I think then the Noble administration has like 60 days to, Steve, you know more about this than I do. Is there, I guess, yeah, you answer.
Yeah, and then for the properties that were rejected, we are going to go back to the Common Council within a 2 months period to be able to provide them with what we propose the council do with those properties that were rejected. And then and so that's our next step with those, 12-ish properties.
But if it is a property that we're still considering, we don't have any new guidance on that.
Sorry, say again.
So if it is I'm not sure if it's one of those two properties, because you said those are occupied. So
Yeah.
if it is a property that they were looking at, that was one that we are still considering, is there anything that we are telling people about those houses, or?
Well, without knowing which properties, so some of them, so the ones that we're buying, some of them, some of this needs to just come out in kind of strategic planning for next year. I know that our main source of funding has basically expressed that they would like us to kind of start pursuing all 4 of the pathways rather than just focusing on rehabs, which I think is a really good thing. So in the next year, I think it's very likely that some of them will be putting out as RFPs, as a sales. Some of them will be rehabs like we're doing now. Some of them will be some level of stabilization and then sell. So obviously those are kind of case by case basis and relying on funding. If it's one of the ones that falls into, so there were kind of 2 other categories. One was basically, we don't feel super comfortable buying until we get an engineer in here because this place is a mess. That was category 1. And category 2 was kind of, we have identified that there is a major title issue. It's really on the foreclosing agency, which is the city of Kingston, to solve. And so sort of formally requesting that that be done. So if it's one of the things from those 2 lists, as far as I know, there's nobody saying we can't have a little more time to look at them, so that's a good thing. And obviously we have, gone through these exhaustively. So if you can figure out which house it is, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I probably know, or.
No, I was just, like, it was a neighbor asking me in passing, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I know there's so much that we're doing right now and don't want to add another thing to the plate, but it might be useful just to even say what you just did about the pathways, that there's kind of 4 pathways that we're considering, just to put that up on the website or something.
Yeah.
Just to give people a sense that it will be coming, but it hasn't taken shape yet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been telling people that too, because we've gotten a couple questions like, I'm a single person and I can't, and I'm like, unfortunately for these, no, but for the there will be more, and they will be available to bigger and smaller household sizes, and
Yeah, to that point, Mike has sent me all the information about the pathway, different pathways for the properties. And I will work with our designer actually to create some easy infographic to put on our website. So that's something that we can point folks to. I haven't done it yet because of all the work we were throwing at her for the marketing period, but it is on my list.
Okay, thank you.
cool. Yeah, thank you. We should, you guys got it.
And I know I think we're still planning perhaps a in-person event in the fundraising committee. We'll see. So maybe as those details take shape, maybe we can think about, is that good timing to kind of have that released, or at least promote it at that event if it's already available.
Cool. Oh, and Bartek, are we planning a gardening day?
Yes. So I haven't sent an email about it yet because I haven't confirmed everything yet, but tentatively I'm planning a work day on June 12th at 248 Main Street. So once I have everything confirmed on my end, I'll send an email around with further details. I will also be sending it out to a few members of the community that have expressed interest in volunteering in such an event.
Fun, fun.
So stay tuned.
Bring your compost, bring your gloves. It'll be great.
All the stuff.
All right. Anyone else? New business? Old business? Just business? All right. Bye, Alana. Okay, I think that's it. Someone can motion to adjourn. Anytime.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Good night,
thanks for all your hard
everyone.
work.
Bye,
Bye.
good night.